It's nice to see so many friends here. And hi, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Welcome to Nebraska.
Thank you. Is this yours?
Is what?
Oh, I'm just kidding. Welcome to Nebraska. It's like saying welcome to my house.
It is.
Well, I'm glad to be here. You serve great meals.
You know, to use the most cornball way of responding to your beautiful little prose, I kind of feel like a mosquito in a news. I have a lot of work ahead of me, and I'm not quite sure where to land. There's just a lot of things to talk about. And I'm a high achiever. I actually have 5 or 6 pages of questions, but forget that. We're not going to get to those. I was actually thinking, many of you know Bill. He was an Icelandic poet that read in Lincoln a few times. And one of my favorite lines he said in talking about life at this time was, we only have time for the most beautiful of music. So I decided we're just going to talk about the most beautiful questions and the most important questions. So I'm skipping most of this, the stuff we would normally ask a visitor, and I want to talk about time, place, and the connection of time and place, and what our responsibilities are this morning. So let's start with place. I've lived in Nebraska almost all my life, and this is my house. This is my house in a very real sense. And even though you're a magnificent traveler, you describe yourself as like a Schooner salmon. You go home, and you've lived in the same place 40 years. And home ground was actually the work of yours that I most enjoy, because I love looking at all these very specific names for features of the geography. So let me start by asking you, what does it mean to be grounded in place? And also, what do you mean by the phrase, authority of the land?
Well, I think to be grounded in a place, you have to have a lifelong conversation, meaning a reciprocal relationship that would be literal or figurative with the particulars of the place. You learn over time what things are called, you know when somebody's missing. But essentially it's a conversation. Some days it's extremely complicated, and other days it's as simple as, hello, I'm so glad you're there. Sometimes people say, well, you know, you travel so much, why do you write about the community so much? It took me a long time to understand that this peregrination is just a moving out to see other parts of the world and then bring back something that I hope will be valuable in my own world. But, you know, to speak to your question, I really think you have to commit the way you commit in a marriage or the way you commit in other important structural parts of your life to a place. And you have to be fearless in the conversation. It can't be simplistic, and it can't be a denial of things that are difficult to talk about or to face together. Somewhere we've gotten in our culture the idea that once you become settled in your life, then everything is easy after that. That's a very dangerous position, I think, to hold, because you're never prepared for the unpredictability of life. And you know, that's at the heart of what Darwin was trying to write about. I think you can analyze to the nth degree what the situation is, but you cannot tell what the situation is going to be in 5 minutes. And because you can't, You don't know who's going to be born and who's going to die, and you don't know what kind of figurative or literal wind is coming. So in order to stay resilient, in order to stay in a state of capability in this reciprocal relationship with place, you always have to be going out to it and responding to what it has to say to you. I remember one time in a village, I've been in a village for a long time, an Eskimo village, and a woman came up to me, very tender, and said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, I'm homesick. I love being here, but I miss my family and I miss my home. And she leaned into me in a grandmotherly way and said, like I was a boy, which in her eyes I was, and said, "Barry, don't you understand that when you're away, your place misses you?" And that was a moment of understanding what this reciprocity is. And what's important about it, one thing that's important about it is that I told a group of students this afternoon that I fell into the habit when I was traveling in the Arctic of asking people in all these remote villages, what do you imagine, what comes to mind when you think of my culture, or people in my culture? And I would almost always get the same answer, which is that you're lonely. You, as a culture, as a people, each one of you is markedly lonely. And so when this woman said, "Don't you understand that your place misses you?" she was saying, hasn't it occurred to you that when you leave your home, there's a space where you were, and people and the land itself misses you and it wants you to come back? That means that you can never be alone, because you're never in a place without the memory of, without the knowledge that you fit somewhere. You have a place in the world. I come across this image so often of, in cultures all over the world now, it's easy to find, especially in refugee situations, men and women, nobody knows their names, don't know where they were born, don't know where they came from, don't know anybody in their family. They die, nobody knows what to do with them. They've been abandoned by all of the networks of life that we tend to take for granted. So, I think of that person as something, anybody who travels sees, which is the dead dogs by the side of the road. And the image that I have is so many of us are fearful that we will end up being a dog dead by the side of the road. Nobody will know who we are or care that we passed away. And when that woman said to me, "Don't you understand this reciprocal relationship?" she was also saying, "Don't you understand, although we do not embody in our village all of those things that your culture considers valuable, that we have something important, fundamentally important that you lack, and that is we know we are never alone. We know when we come back home, no judgment will be made about us. Whatever we have attempted to do and succeeded at or failed makes no difference. We are welcomed back, and when we come back into our place, we're seen as an integral part of life, not as somebody who has to prove every day that they're worthy of a place in the community. You already belong." So, that's a 2-second conversation with somebody that is one reason why I seek out the company of people outside my culture all the time, because I know that in the time, say, between your ancestors and mine were drawing on the walls of a cave in Chauvet 35,000 years ago, and today, in order to create the kind of culture we have, it was necessary, we thought, to throw a lot of things away. And a lot of what we threw away was the ethical relationships we had with everything around us. We found it more convenient to have an industrial revolution or an agricultural revolution because we treated the land like a thing, and eventually we came to treat people like things. So we know in our daily lives that we're all treated like things. We're importuned by advertising which insults our intelligence and demeans our spirit. And we've tried to make our peace with it. And what it feeds in us is a sense that I am so alone, I am nothing but a thing in the world. And my struggle to be a fully developed human being is thwarted by the culture that I've been forced to support. And here are a bunch of people living in a village that ostensibly are living in poverty, but they're living in glory. And the reason they're living in glory is that they know what it means to be in love with each other, to be in love with their place, to be in love with their history, and to function. The world is trying to beat everything out of these people. And then we came along and tried to beat everything out of all of these traditional cultures. They're still there, they're still vital, they're still alive, they're still wise. And my question would be, why are these people not asked to come to the table to speak when, now that we live internationally, we need that wisdom? We don't need yet one more person who is an expert in a very tiny place, which is Western culture.
Well, I agree.